The Muggle Death Eater and His Daughter by Great 78. Chapter 21. Mysteries and Missiles.
Well, isn't this a cozy family reunion?
The crazy woman called Bellatrix said from in front of him. It had taken Richard a moment to collect his thoughts when he saw the young brigade of teens trooping around the corner of row 96 and into the faint, dim glow of row 97. He'd spent the last hour or so working out how best to go about winning over the young wizard enough to give him the prophecy, and for him to then accidentally on purpose destroy it. He had not counted on Harry Potter showing up with the crew, and he certainly had not counted on that crew including his daughter and her friend Draco. "Draco, what are you doing here?" Lucius seethed next to him. Clearly this was as much a surprise to Lucius as it was to Richard. But it was Hermione who spoke.
"Harry saw his friend being tortured. He came to rescue him. We were with him when it happened, so we came along."
"That's excellent," Richard said, quickly cutting his daughter off before she went into more details. "So, Harry, if you will just—"
"Don't butt in!"
the wild-haired witch screamed at him.
"I'm not butting in. I'm trying to get this mission finished before the authorities arrive," Richard answered sardonically. "But if you want to hang around and get arrested, by all means take forever."
As the two of them faced off against each other, the fourth member of their team, the late addition Dolohov, started towards the group of teenagers. He made as though to grab Hermione, who was closest. Swiftly, Richard removed the straw given to him by Voldemort from his shirt pocket. He had gone to the Riddle house that night with a small collection of objects from his private room in his cellar. It was true he did have a small pistol strapped to his ankle, but he had no plans to use it. A gun wasn't necessary, surely. They were going to collect what was essentially a bauble from a teenager, after all. But Richard was not a man who left many things to chance, if he could help it. Inside the tiny kit that he had packed was a variety of useful devices. There was a flashbang, miniature night vision binoculars, a small switchblade disguised as a package of gum, and 3 tiny tranquilizer darts. Ordinarily, these were shot with a dart gun, but the gun had been too large and obtrusive, so Richard had brought them along in case he could throw them. Not quite as effective or accurate, unfortunately, but it helped that he and Hermione had spent many evenings in their back garden, playing darts and bocce. The straw, however, was the perfect size. So as they had waited there in the darkness on aisle 97, Richard had surreptitiously preloaded a dart into the straw chamber, as it were. One could never be too prepared, especially when accompanied by loose cannons like the Death Eaters. This proved fortuitous, as Dolohov made to manhandle his daughter into submission. That would not stand. He swiftly raised the straw to his lips and blew hard. The dart struck directly in the tall, brutish man's jugular. The dark-haired man put his hand up to his neck, knocking loose the dart which rolled under a shelf. A look of shock passed across his face before he fell hard to the ground. Bellatrix rounded in astonishment to stare at Richard. But it was Lucius who spoke up. "We cannot hurt the girl. You know who she is," Lucius said meaningfully to Bellatrix.
"Fine," Bellatrix snarled. "Just get the prophecy."
"Potter, we need you to pick up the prophecy and hand it to us," Lucius said smoothly, turning to the dark-haired teen. "And why the hell would I do that?" the boy said, his eyes darting around wildly. Richard was worried. He knew the Potter boy was smart, but according to Hermione, he sometimes acted first and thought later. Now was not the time for heroics. He had heard a bit from Lucius about Bellatrix Lestrange, and had read the articles about her in the Daily Prophet, which he had continued having delivered to the house, even as Hermione had returned to school. From the way she was described there, she was one who acted first, and thought possibly never. He stepped forward, leaving Lucius and Bellatrix behind him.
"Harry, I'm not sure we've met. I'm Richard Granger, Hermione's father."
"Why are you working with them?" the red-haired wizard asked. He reminded Richard a bit of Arthur Weasley, now that he looked at the boy properly. Hermione had said Harry's best friend was a Weasley. But Richard ignored him, focusing his attention on Harry.
"Look, Harry, we're all on the same side here. There is knowledge to be found in this prophecy, yes? Wouldn't you like answers as well? After all, the prophecy is about you, too."
Richard and the members of the Order had been told by Dumbledore the gist of what this thing said. It truly didn't sound very useful to Richard, but, not being a wizard, perhaps he didn't fully understand. Essentially, the only new information that Voldemort likely didn't have was that either he or Harry would need to die at the hands of the other. But Voldemort already seemed determined to kill the boy, and from the way Hermione, Sirius, and Lobo talked, the feeling was mutual. The entirety of the Order had vowed to do what they could to help Harry kill Voldemort when the time came. Still, the less information Voldemort had, the better. Best to destroy this thing and everyone go home alive, than for his daughter and her friends to risk their lives for a useless record of a prophecy.
"Yeah, I would like to know," Harry said. "Harry, don't!" the Weasley boy said. "Harry!"
Richard locked eyes with the young wizard. He widened his eyes and, without moving his head, looked to his right at the slumped body of Antonin Dolohov. Then he looked back at Harry, locking his stare upon the boy's green eyes. "I'm on your side," he thought. "Please trust me." He knew there was no way to tell this boy this, other than with his gaze. Hesitantly, the scarred wizard reached up for the prophecy. Richard could sense Lucius taking a step closer to him, and he held out a hand as though to stop the man.
"I've got this,"
he called over his shoulder. He gave an imperceptible nod to Harry. Harry took the glass orb from the shelf, holding it carefully, reading the tag on it. Richard stepped forward, his back to the two Death Eaters. He held out his left hand, his right hand digging into the concealed pouch inside his waistband, looking hard at Hermione now. Using his body to shield the view from Lucius and Bellatrix, he put the flashbang in Hermione's hands. "Hit the bull's-eye," he whispered through clenched teeth. He felt the glass ball fall softly into the palm of his hand, at the same moment that Hermione winded up discreetly to throw the device directly at Bellatrix. Within 2 seconds the room began filling with light and smoke, as the device bounced off the older witch's skirt. Lucius fell forward to the ground from the concussion of the blast. The red-haired girl, who Richard sensed had been looking for an opportunity to join the fray, stepped forward and stomped hard on Lucius's outstretched hands with her boot heel. There was a muffled but unmistakable crunch of broken bones. With the older Malfoy's hand injured, it was the perfect foil for his next step.
"Lucius, catch!"
Richard lobbed the glass sphere forcefully, purposefully a few inches short of Lucius's fingertips. Everyone, minus the unconscious Dolohov, watched in horror and fascination as the glass shattered on the ground. Pearlescent ghostly figures rose from the shards, their voices drowned out by the yells from Bellatrix and the Weasley boy. Richard took the opportunity of the momentary distraction and turned back to Hermione, Harry, and Draco.
"Get everyone out! Now! Hurry!"
he urged quietly, and Draco nodded. He turned back to Bellatrix and Lucius.
"Let's go!" he yelled. With all this noise, the authorities will be on their way."
Bellatrix turned on her brother-in-law.
"Lucius, you imbecile! How could you drop that?"
Then she looked up at the retreating crowd of teenagers.
"They're getting away!"
She fired a stream of green light from her wand, only to be yanked to the ground by Lucius.
"That's my son with them, you stupid bitch," Lucius began. "And the Dark Lord's daughter. You, of all people, should care about that. And you know the Dark Lord wishes to kill Potter himself."
"So you're just letting them go?" she cried in anger.
"What choice do we have?" Richard said bitterly. "Clearly, Hermione and Draco are trying to infiltrate Potter's circle of trust. At least Potter didn't get to hear the prophecy, either."
"And what was that thing she threw at me?"
Bellatrix fumed. "No idea," Richard said with feigned confusion. Hermione's mind was buzzing with questions as the 5 of them raced back through the numerous doors and into the circular spinning room.
"Which way is the way out? Where is the exit?"
Ginny screamed, and just like that, a door in the miasma of portals opened. With quick, incredulous looks at each other, the 5 of them barreled through, Draco and then Harry bringing up the rear. They raced for the nearest flue, praying that Umbridge had not woken up and locked it from the other side. Luck was with them, and the 5 of them stepped out of the grate, back into the pink purgatory that was this crazed witch's office. At the sound of them entering, she began stirring a bit, and Harry and Ron both sent stunning spells her way. "What shall we do with her?" asked Ron, breathlessly. A mischievous smirk played across Draco's features. "Let me handle it," he said, tapping on his inquisitorial squad badge. "I need some answers now," Harry began, but he was stopped by Ginny.
"One issue at a time," she said. "Besides, if this hag can hear us—"
Harry nodded tensely and clamped his teeth together. After a minute or so of uncomfortable silence, Theo and Blaise arrived.
"Where do you want her?"
Theo said, cracking his knuckles comically, looking down at Umbridge. "What?" asked Harry in confusion, whilst at the same time Ginny asked,
"How's your Parseltongue? Harry can open the chamber for you."
"Ginny?" said Harry and Hermione together. Said Draco, as though he was considering it.
"The Forbidden Forest?" suggested Ron. "Plenty of scary shite in there." "Now you're talking, Ickle Ronnikins," the familiar voice of George Weasley, or Fred, Hermione still occasionally had a hard time telling them apart, said from the doorway. "What are you 2 doing here?"
Ron looked up in surprise at his older twin brothers.
"Not ran into us on his way here. Said we might be interested in helping out," the second twin said. "And after this old hag had us removed from the team in our last Quidditch season for some bullshit reason." "Since when do you have to have at least 4 OWLs to play in 7th year?" George / the other one groused. "Since when are the 3 of you friends?" Ron asked, mystified. "We're not just friends," Theo boasted. "We're going to be business partners come September."
"What do you mean?" Harry asked.
"Well, George and I are planning to open a joke shop in Diagon, and Theo here has agreed to back us."
"How?" asked Hermione in confusion.
"I turn 17 on September 6th, and I'll control my inheritance from my mother then. The Foley coffers need to diversify." Draco laughed. "You're doing this to piss off Tiberius." Theo smirked. "Let's see him try to ignore me when we open Knott's Nefarious Notions." "Fred and I have already told you that's not the name, Knott." "What are you going to call it?" Ginny asked. "Weasley's Wizard Wheezes," said George.
"What's your second choice?" Blaise asked, wrinkling his nose in distaste.
"Weasley's Wizard Wheezes," said Fred more sternly.
"Yeah, that's fine,"
agreed Blaise. "So, where are we bringing this?" asked Theo, stooping to check that Umbridge was still out. "It's getting late. The Slytherin party is in full swing, and there's a hot Ravenclaw I'm supposed to be meeting." "Forest works for me," said Blaise, as the twins nodded. "Let's just," George said as he waved his wand at the frolicking kitten plates, vanishing them quickly. "That's better." "And we'll just take these back," said Fred, summoning his and George's broomsticks that Umbridge had confiscated. "Right. We're ready when you are, Snakes." Theo and Blaise pointed their wands at Umbridge, lifting her upright into a vertical stance, where she slumped toadishly. They pointed their wands, levitating her into the corridor. "How do you feel about Zabini's zany zingers?" "Sounds clunky," a twin said, as the four of them moved down the passageway to the stairs. "Zabini's zealous zeitgeist," the Slytherin offered. "You open a shop and call it that," challenged the other twin. The 5 people remaining in Umbridge's office were quiet for a minute, before Harry turned back to the others, shaking his head as though to clear it of the nonsense they had just witnessed. "Okay, I need some answers, and I'd like them now." He turned first to Draco. "Malfoy, did you know your father was going to be there tonight? Did you tip him off that we were coming?" Draco rolled his eyes. "Potter, I didn't even know I was going to go there tonight, much less my father. If you recall, you made the decision to go, and I made the decision to follow you, and then we went. When exactly would I have had time to contact my father?" Harry appeared to consider this, then nodded to himself. He turned next to Hermione. "What about you?" "What about me?" she asked defensively. "What was your father doing there with Death Eaters, Hermione? What do you think he's asking?" Ginny asked sarcastically. I don't know," she whispered, as she let the memory of the encounter in the Department of Mysteries overtake her once more. Her stomach twisted into knots. "I really don't know." "I may have an idea," said Draco reluctantly, and Hermione's eyes flashed to him. "Did your father imperious him?" she asked swiftly. "What? No, Hermione. Did he act imperious at all?" "He helped us back there," Ginny said, in awe at the recollection of events. "He gave you that loud thing to cause a distraction, and, at least from my angle, he threw the prophecy short on purpose. I'm sure of it." "Which doesn't still answer the question of why was he there in the first place?" Ron said. "Hermione, do you have a way of getting in touch with your dad right now?" "No," she whispered, tears coming to her eyes suddenly as the gravity of the situation hit her. "I don't know what's going on, and I don't know why my father was there." A voice from the doorway startled all 5 of them. "Perhaps I will be able to shed light on the situation," drawled Professor Snape. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Muggle Death Eater by Great 78.